Today I'm going to cover a do-it-yourself transmission flush. Alright, so what I'm doing, it's not like I invented it or anything, but I haven't seen anything like this on YouTube. So I am going to make a video on and hopefully help some people out. Disclaimer, I am not a mechanic. I'm not telling you to do this to your car. I'm only showing you what I've done on my car, and hopefully that'll help you out. This is pretty universal. It should work on just about any car. I am doing it on a 2007 Jeep Grand Cherokee today. The reasons for doing this at home. The quick oil change lube places usually don't get all the fluid out. They're just trying to get your car in as quick as they can, get it out. So in my case, I have about 4 quarts in the transmission pan and 2 quarts in my torque converter. Well, they don't get the 2 quarts out of the torque converter, so about a third of the fluid is left in there dirty. You can get it flushed, but that is pretty expensive, usually 200 bucks or more. And so we're going to save a little bit of money doing it this way. And then there's always just the nobody cares about your car as much as you do. You're going to make sure you take your time. You're not going to snap off bolts, and if you do, you'll actually know you snapped off bolts, where a lot of times they won't tell you that. They'll they'll mess up your stuff, and then they'll just hope you never notice. And it's kind of like, I love my car. It's like a woman. I'm gonna service it myself and make sure it's done right, and not ever take it anywhere else. And that keeps you from having problems down the road. And like any woman, if there are major problems down the road, then you take it to someone else and let them deal with it. You know what I mean. Alright, so what we're going to need is fluid pan and probably a new torque wrench now that I just did that. And then I like to have just another pan just for the oily, dirty tools. I don't like to get oil all over the ground. I care about this environment. And then gloves will help keep your fingernails clean. I'm in between women right now, so I gotta have clean fingernails, otherwise it might be a while. Torque wrench for the transmission pan bolts so you don't bust them off. And then fluid, of course. I'm not going to use all this, at least I hope not. But it's good to have extra. Just get it all here so you don't have to take a break to go get some, and then you can just return whatever's there. The guys, auto places are cool about that stuff. I actually told the guy I was going to be bringing some back, and he did not care. And then make sure you get the right fluid for your car, because not all cars are the same. Mine takes ATF plus 4. I'm using cheap stuff. Please don't judge me. And then you're going to need transmission filter. And in my case, I'm going to need 2 gaskets because I'm going to have to drop the pan twice. But you won't have to do that once you're done with this modification of putting the drain plug in there. If you have a drain plug, then you can pretty much skip over the first part of this video. But most of us don't. I don't know why they don't put transmission drain plugs in. I know you have to drop the pan to change the filter anyway, but it's still kind of dumb because it just makes it a lot messier. Helps to have a manual for your car. Even on a simple job like this, sometimes there's little things you just don't know. I'm going to use a suction pump to get the first part of the fluid out, and then, like I said, I don't have a drain plug, so what I'm going to do is use one of these universal drain plugs here. It's just pretty much a double-sided nut. You're going to have to drill a hole. This one requires a 1/2-inch drill bit, of course a drill. I'm going to deburr it, and then I'm going to get rid of the nylon washers it came with. I'm sure they're fine, but nylon can get brittle and break. I'm going to switch to steel. I'm going to seal it with RTV and Loctite that in. Now, a really good person is going to get a weld bung, and they're actually going to weld it to their transmission to be a lot safer. But I figure most of us don't have welders, even though I do. But I just wanted to do something that would help more people with just simple hand tools. And then you're also going to need simple hand tools, of course, just some sockets. Depending on your transmission, mine takes a 10 millimeter, I think. I haven't looked that closely yet. Just a ratchet, some extensions, maybe a wrench. Pretty simple stuff. If you have a filter like this, you might need a filter wrench. And I'm also going to put a pan underneath. That's just a washer drain pan. Hey, I live in a condo. Look, this is actually my kitchen. So, you know, those are clean. Those are dirty. So obviously you don't have to be super high tech to do this. And I am definitely not. So brief overview of what we're going to do. We're going to use the suction pump. We're going to stick that straight down the dipstick tube. And suck as much as we can out of there. Then we're going to loosen the bolts on the transmission pan. We're going to crack that as about a 1/2 inch, just enough to stick this tube in there. Then we're going to suck it out that way. The reason why is because that transmission pan is going to have fluid sloshing all over in there. It's hard to deal with, especially when you have to deal with old RTV or whatever might be on there that's sticking that pan on. And that's just going to make it so it's not so messy. We're going to drop the pan all the way off, bring it inside, clean it out really well, drill the hole in there, seal the plug in there, and then we'll reinstall it with the first gasket and put new fluid in there. We're going to drive it around for a few miles and let that old fluid all circulate. After that, this is going to be super easy. We're just going to drain it through the drain plug. Tighten it up, put more fluid in, and at this point we should be using 6 to 8 quarts depending on your transmission. On the final change, we are going to drain it. We're going to watch the fluid. It should be pretty clean. If it comes out clean, then we're going to drop the pan again and change the filters. I don't want to be pushing that dirty fluid through my new filters, so I'm going to drop the pan, change the filters, and do the final pan install. Seal it really well with a new gasket and fill it with fluid, and we'll be done. Now the next time you do it, it's going to be super easy, because once you have that drain plug in there, you're just going to drain it, fill it, drain it, fill it, and then drop the pan after you've driven it around. And that's just going to circulate all that old fluid through there. By the 3rd time we do this, it should be super clean. In fact, if it's super clean on the 2nd time, I might try to leave a few quarts of that old fluid in there in the pan and just carefully lower it down, and then just fill it accordingly after I've changed the filters. But we'll see. We'll try to keep this video super short. We're 8 minutes in. I'm going to try and have the video under 15 minutes total. So I'm not going to show you every single detail, especially since this is universal. And you've obviously got shit to do. You got a transmission fluid to change. Alright, here we go. Okay, so a lot of background noise here. Hopefully you can hear me. First thing you're going to do is locate your transmission dipstick tube. Okay, as you can see, the fluid just comes out that way. Get a better suction pump than I did, because this thing sucks, and not in the good way, but it's working. Okay, so once you get all the fluid sucked up through or as much of the fluid as you can sucked up through the dipstick, get a good suction pump. I was using a siphon pump and kind of just hand pumping it. That took a really long time, but it's really nice because you don't get a lot of mess from it. But if you get a real actual suction pump, then it'll go a lot faster. Next, you gotta locate your transmission pan. There's mine. I'm gonna have to take all the bolts out. I've got some of them loose already. I've just got one in there holding it so it doesn't fall down. You're gonna have to very, very gently pry between the pan and the transmission, and just really lightly, just a little bit at a time, pull that transmission fluid pan down, and then we'll get inside of there and take a look. Or actually, I'm kind of overlooking a step. We're gonna crack it just a little bit, just enough to stick the suction pump in there into the transmission fluid pan, because you can't get it all through the dipstick. It just, the tube, you don't know where the tube can't get all the way in there. Maybe on some transmissions you can, but this one I could definitely feel it stopping. So we'll make just a little gap here, just enough to stick that suction pump in there, and it should actually work really well from down here because I'll actually have it below the level of the fluid I'm sucking. And then we'll drop the pan all the way off. Okay, I've loosened my bolts. I've actually taken all out but one. You'll want to leave just one or two in there just to make sure it doesn't just flop down on you. But now we just stick the tube into this gap right into the pan there, and we'll suck the rest of it out. And I'm sitting here saying, it just saves the mess. You can do it the old dirty way and just let all the fluid come out. But after we put that plug in, you're not ever going to suck the fluid out again. So there's that to consider too. And you see that it got a little shiny. Some of the bolts, as you loosen them, they'll feel a little bit of fluid that comes out with them. That's why that's there. But overall, it was pretty clean. I made sure I put my pan and everything underneath it anyway, just to make sure anything came out, it would get caught. Alright, got the pan off. Now you'll have to make sure you get all this RTV, or you might have old gasket on there or something. Make sure you scrape that off kind of gently with a razor blade or a scraper. Next we're going to take this in, clean it up, and drill the hole. I was super lucky that all the RTV stayed on the pan, so I didn't have to clean too much on the transmission, just a little bit of scraping here and there. Whoever did it before me, I'm not the first owner of this car, had RTV all over the flippin' filter, this filter, the second filter. So makes me wonder what's been going on inside that transmission, but it was shifting okay, so I'm not too worried about it. But that's just another one of those things, is just you never know what somebody else has done. That's why I like to do as much as I can by myself and not rely on somebody else, because they'll do stuff like that and not even care. They just slap it together. You can see I'm just using a razor blade here. Make sure you use something safe. Razor blade's probably not the right thing to do, or at least use a razor blade with a handle. But just to get that whole gasket surface clean. And next we'll drill the hole and I'll show you that. Alright, I took a wire wheel to the outside and it's all clean and shiny. So now if you have to put a drain plug in yours, or if you decide to, you'll want to be real strategic about where you put it. Look underneath the car, make sure you're not going to put it in the way of any of the bolts, anything that might get in the way, because it hangs out a little bit. That's probably about 3/4 of an inch to an inch that it's going to hang out. You don't want it hanging down or just in the way anywhere. On mine, the best place I found is right here on the side. Still trying to decide if I'm going to put it in the side or the back. We'll see in just a minute, but either way, it's actually in a really good spot. So make sure you do that with your own car before you drill the hole. And also keep in mind, the logical place would be just in the lowest part of the transmission. But on mine, it's not. It's going to be right in the way. That's the lowest part there. It's going to be right in the way of the catalytic converter, and it'll make it really hard to get to these bolts up here, which are covered by the flipping exhaust pipe. They were a pain in the ass. So I'm not going to put in the lowest part. The thing about these plugs is they kind of sit up anyway. You're not ever going to be able to get every last drop of fluid out, but you just want to get enough so that when you drop that pan, you just have a slight bit in the bottom, and it's not going to splash everywhere, make the pan super heavy and sloshy. If you get down to like 1/4 inch of fluid, you're doing pretty good. But then once again, we are trying to flush it, so the lower we can get it, the better. So I'm actually going to go look again and see if maybe I can put it in that lower section on the left. We'll see. Okay, we're getting close to being done. I did go look again. I found a little bit better place that was a little bit lower. but not necessarily, it's not the exact lowest spot on the transmission. You might be wondering why I didn't just put it straight up through the bottom. So it'll just stick up this way. I don't want it to be hanging down, especially since on this particular car it's a 4-wheel drive and I do take it off-road a little bit. I don't want anything hanging down to get caught on stuff. So it's a little more protected in this spot that I chose. And you actually, the nut on top is going to stick up anyway. So where I've got it now, I might actually be slightly lower. I don't know. Either way, it's going to work. It's going to make the next job so much faster and easier and cleaner. So now all you got to do is stick it in through the hole. You'll want to, I only have one hand here and not very good lighting. Then you'll want to put some sealer on the washer, put the washer there, seal the other side of the washer, put the nut on, and I'm going to use a washer on the outside too, so it's basically going to look like that inside the pan. And then on the outside, if it will stay in there, nope, it won't. On the outside, it's going to look like this, and we'll just have a drain plug. And I'm starting to run over on my time, so I don't want to take too much of your time, because if you're watching this video, you are obviously interested in changing your transmission fluid, and you want to sit here and watch a video for 20 minutes to learn how. Basically now we just put it back together. We put the gasket on, or RTV, whatever you decide to use. I'm going to wait to put the new filters in until I've drained it a couple times, at least once. All you got to do is watch the fluid, see if it's nice and clean and red. Like the fluid that came out of my transmission that I have got out so far was pretty brown. So as you drain out of the drain plug, after you've ran it for a couple miles, you'll just watch that fluid. And here I am rambling, but once that fluid looks pretty clean, hopefully on the second time you drain it, then you'll just put the new filter in, and the next time you do this, all you'll have to do is drain the fluid out, fill the pan again, drive around, I would say 2 miles, 5 miles, I don't know, something like that, just enough to circulate all the fluid and dilute it, and then you'll put more transmission fluid in there, and you'll only have to drop the pan once, because after that second time you drain it, you'll drop the pan, put the new fluid in there, fill it, and be done. I'm going to have to take the pan off twice because I didn't have a drain plug. And I should mention, once you've drilled that hole, make sure you get it really, really clean. Make sure you get all those metal shavings out of there, because that is transmission suicide to have metal shavings in there. I'm just going to use a magnet and go along the bottom and pick up as much as I can, and then I'm going to wash it out with soap, just to make sure I get every single last bit of it.